Morning guys, welcome back to the channel. So, I finally got my car back. It's now fully upgraded. So today I'm going to do a slightly different video to normal. It's going to be a kind of a warts and all review of the upgrade process, because it definitely didn't go as smoothly as it should have, in my opinion. I'll try and be blatantly honest about what happened to me. I'm not going to mention names, but I think it's important that people know the pitfalls of this process if they decide to do it themselves. There is a chance, of course, that I may have been just extremely unlucky, and there may be some bias in my explanation because obviously I'm just seeing it from my point of view, but I think that information needs to be out there. On top of that, I'll talk about the good bit, which is the upgrades that have been done and how well they perform, because they do perform well, and I hope you enjoy. So, back in April, late April, I decided that I wanted to have the car upgraded, and after much thought I landed on three main areas. So the first one was to have the car lowered slightly and put on lowering springs. In this particular instance, I chose to go through recommendation with the KW spring kit. The reason why I went for that kit was because I've got experience of KW products in the past, and also the spring kit's fully adjustable. So it works a bit like a coilover. They fit a collar to the damper, and they can actually raise and lower the vehicle as is needed. The second part of the upgrade was the replacement of the stock cats, and that was replaced with Larini sports cats, 200 cell cats. The idea being that it frees up the exhaust system, allows it to breathe more effectively, and then generates more power. The added bonus is better sonics from the exhaust system. And then finally, a map. The map obviously applied post Sport Cat fitting. Because I've got the Sport Cat fitted, it allowed the stage 2 map to be completed, and the advantage of that is fairly obvious: you get a load more power. So my car was booked in 5 weeks in advance, before the upgrades were due to be done. The reason why that was done was to allow time to get parts in. The main part that they were going to be waiting for was the Larini sports cats, and Larini were quoting 2 to 4 weeks. So the 5 weeks lead period should have been enough time to get the parts in. Anyway, took my car in on the given date and dropped it off, and took the courtesy car, and everything seemed okay. So I was expecting, as to the estimation I was given, that I would be waiting about a week, maybe 10 days for that work to be done. A week went by and I sort of heard nothing. So I did have a contact email from the company, and the company basically said that they'd finished fitting the suspension to include the springs and spacers, but that they'd gone to the parts department and the cats were not there. So this seemed a bit strange to me. You know, I was assuming that if they'd booked my car in and the parts weren't in stock, that they would have warned me or advised me or attempted to put the drop-off date back, but I'd had nothing mentioned about that, so I was a bit disillusioned, but didn't make much of a fuss about it. I just said that that I wasn't particularly impressed. They insisted that they would be chasing the matter up on a regular basis, and that they'd get it done as quickly as possible as soon as I got the parts in. So I waited and I waited, and 8 days went by basically, and I'd heard nothing. So my frustration finally broke, and I contacted them, and it turned out that the sports cats had arrived on the day that I rang, apparently, and that the car was going to go straight into the workshop and have those fitted. So I'm like, right, okay, I suppose at least we're making progress. So a number of days went by, and one of the things that I'd asked was, because I hadn't actually physically seen the parts, I asked them if you could take some pictures of the work that was being done. And sure enough, on the Friday of that week, I got an email with some really nice pictures, and so I rang them and I inquired about when the tuning was going to be done, and they said that it was going to start that day and into Saturday. So I'm like, fine, okay, so maybe I'll get the car back at some point midweek the next week or early next week. So the weekend went by, and then I chased them up again on the Monday, and the car had gone into tuning on the Monday. So I'm like, okay, another bit of a delay. No notification of that, obviously. So the car went into tuning, and I requested a dynograph, which I got sent, and the numbers looked really good. So I was happy with that. And then the day later, I got a message from them saying that there was a problem with the car's driver's side window, and that it was stuck in the downward position, and that the company had got full McLaren programming and diagnostic equipment, but that they couldn't get it to go back up again, but they were going to investigate it. So that was, again, a little bit annoying, and so I had a phone call from someone at the company, and generally what they seem to want me to do is to come and get my car and then take it to a dealership and get it booked in with the dealership to get it fixed. And so I explained to the company that I thought, well, yes, but, you know, I'm handing you about £8,000 for the work that you're doing. There's something just seems a little bit wrong about taking my car into you in perfect working order and then bringing it back and the window not to be working. So that they said fine, they'd got a good relationship with a McLaren dealership, and that they'd get it over to the dealership and they'd try and get it sorted for me because the car's under warranty. So I'm like, fair enough. So they said the car will go into McLaren on the Thursday. So this is following the tuning being finished on the Tuesday. So waited and waited, and it got to Friday morning and I hadn't heard anything. So I chased it up again, and the car hadn't gone to McLaren. It was still with the company. So I'm like, well, what's happening then? And they said, well, it's going to go to McLaren next week. I'm like, okay. So waited again. Hadn't heard anything by late afternoon on the Monday, so I chased them again, and was told that it was going to go into McLaren on the Tuesday and that they would keep me updated. But as I probably only received about 3 points of contact at this point, and at this point, you know, it's nearly a month on, I was just going to chase it up myself because I knew that I wouldn't hear anything. So chased it up on the Wednesday and was told that McLaren had diagnosed it as a calibration issue and that it was all fixed. So I was like, great, at least the car's fixed. So I decided to pick it up from the McLaren dealership, because the McLaren dealership was a lot closer to me than the vehicle modifying company. So I drove there in the courtesy car and had arranged to leave the courtesy car with them. And the McLaren dealership were really nice and said, yeah, it was a fairly straight problem and we've washed your car for you, and it was looking nice and shiny and it was looking slammed, so I was kind of quite happy. So I jumped in my car to drive home, which was about an hour and a half drive home. And literally within 5 minutes, I've got arch rub. So I've got arch rub front and rear, all four corners, and we're talking about going over mild bumps arch rub. So I'm literally getting it on the motorway, going over light bumps. I'm getting a rubbing sound coming from all four corners of the car. So my heart sinks, and at this point I'm like, well, I just really didn't know what to do. I was just like completely dumbfounded. So pulled over into a service station and called the car modifying company and explained this to them, that I just really didn't know what to say at this point after everything else that had gone on. And they said, well, we need the car back. We just need to adjust the height. So I said, look, I'm exhausted. I'm really tired. I'm stressed out. By this time, it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, I just want to go home and I'll speak to you about it tomorrow. So went home, had something to eat and thought on it. And at this point, I was getting really quite hesitant as to whether I wanted to give my car back to the company. But having talked with some friends, I decided that having paid all the money, that I was owed that. So they kindly, but I think rightly, agreed to trailer the car back without me having to drive it to them again, because it's about 2 hours from me. So they came and picked it up on the Monday. And I was told that I would literally have it back on the Wednesday. So they'd pick it up on the Monday, they'd adjust the suspension on the Tuesday, and that I'd get it back on the Wednesday. But I was understandably skeptical, and that skepticism turned out to be right. So had contact from the actual guy that was working on it this time, who was a very nice chap and probably the best person I'd interacted with through the whole process. And he was basically saying no matter what height they set the suspension at, because as I said, the KW springs are height adjustable, they couldn't stop it rubbing. And despite the fact that they had a project car with exactly the same suspension setup on it, the only thing they could see that was different was my tyres. Now, their project car had got Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's on it, and my car has Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2's on it. But their hypothesis was that the Cup 2 has a fatter profile. My challenge for that was, well, this is meant to be a developed package. What are you telling me you've only tried it out with one tyre design? Because obviously different McLaren owners are going to use different tyres. So yeah, again, really quite annoyed, but they said don't worry, what we're going to do is we are going to machine the shims down, the spacers down rather, and we'll get it fitting so it still looks great, but we'll just need to probably machine the spacers because they're 13 mils wide. We can take them down and we'll get it spot on. So waited, and then I think, oh, that was the next thing. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. But in order to test the car fully, they needed my wheel bolts because they literally hadn't got any standard length wheel bolts. So I had to post them by next day delivery, my set of standard length wheel bolts, so that they could test the car without any spacers on. And they didn't get those till Thursday. So then they didn't look at the car again till Friday. And then I had a call basically saying that they didn't think it was worth bothering with the spacers and that they were kind of going to give up on that idea. And that they just recommend that I have the car without the spacers, just lowered, and they'd refund me for the spacers. So I thought about it and I thought, well, yeah, okay, I just want my car back. So I agreed to that, and then I got the car back Monday just gone. So in total, the whole process was about 6 weeks. Kind of disappointed with the whole process. Really bad communication. No real offer of any type of, well, no offer really of any type of compensation other than them taking it to McLaren for me and paying McLaren the £100 fee to get the window fixed. But out of an £8,000 bill, obviously that's not a huge amount of money in my opinion. And on top of that, when they first billed me and they actually sent me the invoice before I even knew my car was completed, which was another kick in the ghoulies, they actually billed me for I think it was around £300 or £400 more than what they'd originally quoted me, which was great. But I got that change back, obviously. So there we go. Not the greatest of experiences by a long mark, but the car does perform really well. So I'm going to do the second part of this in another video, I think, because otherwise this one's going to drag on too long. But yeah, any questions, comment below, and I'll be back in a minute talking about the fun part, which is the performance of the upgrades that have been installed. See you soon.